said it better myself. I think it's important that we don't only spend the time in the practice room. That time is necessary, of course, to hone your skills. But the imagination is not going to come from your practice room. It's going to come from seeing nature, from reading books, from being in love, from being hurt, from a million other things, which you in turn can sort of transmit through noise. But music is the language that is just like any other language. So if you just sit and practice, so you can play all the notes, but then what? What do those notes represent? What are they going to tell you? I also agree completely that sound is very important. And in this digital generation, when you can actually manipulate everything, I was struck. Steinway wanted me to have what's it called?
Stereo.
Stereo, yes. So they brought a stereo piano in my house for a few months during COVID, so I could give a class on the stereo piano. And I played a little bit on it. You can play a chord recorded on stereo. You can change one note in the chord. You can make one note louder than the other. You can things that you can do is mind-boggling. It's like playing video games. And it kind of brought me back to how people used to make recordings. It was one take. You play, you done. So you couldn't do it a million times and get it to a certain perfection. So there was something immediate in that process rather than sitting down. I mean, of course, Gould, for instance, he didn't think that the live performance is sustainable because it has too many perfections. So that was another point of view. But still, there was not so much that was digitized. In today's world, what do you guys, when you listen to music, what do you listen on? Earphones probably, right? So the sound quality is not always great. I mean, it sounds, it's okay. But I think we're losing the actual sense of the expressivity that comes with each individual sound that comes out of the instrument of the voice. For instance, if you're trying to create a singing line at the piano, how can you do that if you don't know what the singing line by voice sounds like? So I think all of those things are important. And I urge you all to not just commit yourself to practicing a certain amount of hours, because that will take you, to a certain point, but that's kind of a dead end if that's all you do. And speaking of classes, I happen to hear a couple of words here and there, and I try not to miss any master classes that I can attend to, because I think that the learning process never stopped. I was shocked that Richard Good, who is now part of the faculty, but he's been coming for classes for many years. I came to the last master class that he gave. It was an absolutely incredibly inspiring, beautiful class. And when I turned around, I realized that there were 3 people in the hall, including myself. And I thought, this is ridiculous. You drop everything, go and listen. You might hear something that's revelatory when you least expect it. When Leon Fleischer was giving classes, again, same story. People were out in the plaza drinking coffee. And when I said, well, why are you not in there? Oh, we heard the last class. Really? Well, you ate yesterday too. So anyway, I'm done.
Sofya, you were well, imagination. Yes, well, very many aspects, just instead of describe them colleagues. Talking about sound, for example, they talk about it all the time. Imagine the sound. How can you imagine the sound? Which music can I say? Only piano music? For me, it was always very important to listen to the opera singing, because for me, it's not the percussive instrument, it's the singing instrument, and that's the first thing you have to know for yourself when you piano. Yeah. to sing with all the time. That's why when we talk about golden age pianists, we hear this sound which we can't hear anymore. Really, I'm hearing somebody attend a concert with, let's call them maybe lions, yeah, piano art. And, but the sound quality was absolutely unique before, and now we are losing it. And I think it's such a complex thing because it's also important to listen not only to the piano music, to get in your ears the sound you want. I will never forget when I was playing current variations from a teacher, Patricians, and then this D-flat major variation he plays, and it sounds like a choir. You know, like really gigantic choir, amazing modulation. He made this sound. He said, I still, how? How you did that? Show me. He said, no, you have to get it yourself. I will not show you. He said, because I have it here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then I was given, I was finding, you are looking for, you are searching for it. You want something, you have it in your ears, in your mind, and I don't know, somewhere else. But I think it's also important to listen, to see Penneys point of views, of course. And even good pop singers. I mean, I enjoy it. I really like to understand how they do it with their voice, because as Boris did, for example, singing, yeah? We talk about singing live at home, but how would you do it vocally? How much solfege? It's also very important for the men that are engaged. How to solfege and singing quality. Even if you don't have a good voice, it doesn't matter, but it's important to learn it, to reach, a certain way, yeah? And the card and everything, endless possibilities. And then on piano, it's a king of instrument. You can't imitate any instrument. You can't create any style. Just orchestra, organ, bel canto, whatever, string. You can do everything on piano. It's so endless, and it's so rich. I'll get you so much possibilities. We're just lazy. We're just lazy to get there.
And you want to comment on maybe like when you practice yourself on experimentation and trying things different ways? And
Yeah.
Maybe talk about that. I mean, how to teach that, or just breaking into the routine or like have a practice.
Gosh, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I know my teachers were really incredible inspiration to me. I mean, their use of vocabulary, the use of imagery, the way they demonstrated. But I would just say, before I go into how I practice, I would just say, please be patient. There is no pill that you can take right now and get everything. Yeah? This is not something that has to be achieved by the age of 30 because competition is over. This is something that will develop and grow into something incredibly beautiful that you will find fulfillment and love for if you have the patience. Because there is something so incredibly magnificent what we do. It just takes time. It takes openness of heart and your soul, besides practicing perfectly. But to be able to be open to things that you have experienced, maybe listening to another pianist, or listening to an opera, listening to a symphony concert, or somebody that you play chamber music with, or if you get to work with a conductor. It's all about how you gather information. You are the hard drive. I hope I'm using that correctly. But that is you're just collecting things, and it's as you go through life, you can then apply it. And so at your age, I was clueless. I was just kind of bumbling around, didn't know what I was doing. But having now taught for a few years, I have to say my teaching has helped me in my own work. Having to articulate what I'm trying to say Because like Boris had said, it's really a language. And you're trying to say something. You're trying to tell a story that Chopin had written for us, a story that Beethoven has written for us. But that story, you may have a plan here and there, because that's what the score said, but it's only the beginning. Like Antonio says, you try to tell a full story as best you understand it, with respect to what he said. So be patient, be open, and take your time. You know, God, it was all done by 30. What are you going to do after that? You know, we only, I think, have a deeper understanding, deeper love. And it's not about how fast. It's what you feel when you are sitting there listening and being open to whatever's being played. I don't know if that answers the question at all.
No, that's beautiful.
Well, I'll just throw in that I think that one of the most important things is for you all to be yourselves.
Yeah.
Not to play like the person who's playing in the next door practice room or 4 doors down. Or, oh, so-and-so really plays this piece well, I'll imitate that person. Even if you try to imitate somebody, you're not going to be going to take them. Now, everybody in this room can play all the notes at the right time. So that's like not music, that's like communication. But, you know, I mean, we all have this mother tongue of music in common. So we all speak the same language. The question is, are we going to communicate anything with it through the composers we fight? So the idea, I think that we need this in the world. We need to really value the fact that we're all unique, we're all different, we all have a different fingerprint. And if I can play something on the piano and Antonio gets up to play this piano, and then Angie or Alvin or whatever, the piano sounds different. And it's not changing, it's still the same piano, not perfectly in tune with all the track trouble that it has. And why is that? Because it's our energy that goes through the instrument. So, you know, I would think that when you go into your practice room, if you're dead tired, there's almost no point. You're not going to be evolving to a higher level. And of course, if you're just learning notes and you need to do that, fine. They also won't stick as well as you're really tired. But you need to be alert. You need to have, you know, sort of like your antenna up. You have to be aware in order to have energy. I mean, even talking, and you know, you're not asleep. You have to. It's an energy transfer. So, I think that, you know, to express, to have the guts, really what it is, to express your uniqueness, whether you're right or wrong. That's what you have a teacher for. You could say, oh, that's way too much robotic. That's way too straight. That's fine. Don't be afraid to go back and forth. And eventually, or maybe not eventually, you can always be a little this way, that way. Your performances are going to change because, I mean, the truth of the matter is nobody plays the same way every single day. And it's a trip. You go on, you go into town, it's like opening the door to like this, you know, magic box. That's what it is for me anyway. And I don't really know exactly where that trip is going to go, but I know I'm going on a trip and I love that. And you sort of need to fall in love with that. All of our teachers, I think we would say, were high energy people that had that. Something happened when they played the piano, and if you know, you can reach a little bit through the barrier of time. Like if you go in to listen to really old historical recordings of very dead pianists who've been dead a long time, and you hear a lot of, but you also hear a lot of improvisation, and you hear a lot of, you know, ornamentation, and that was their window. That is what this festival is about. I hope beyond, you know, Pope, that you all really can play more and more differently and listen, you know, to this room, which is very live. It's not a great hall, we all know that, but still, magic can happen anywhere. So that's I want you all to be magicians. That's my wish. Certain.
Well, for me, there are two kinds of imagination. I mean, I think everything that's been said here is incredibly valuable information, but
when I approach a piece, I may think of stories, but for example, if I'm studying a Mozart concerto or a Mozart sonata, you should listen to some Mozart operas first, because everything in Mozart is about the voice, is melodic, and often refers to characters in his operas. And when you're playing one of the sonatas or one of the piano concertos, that's a way to get closer to Mozart's imagination and spirit. So the other kind of imagination that for me is just as important as telling a story is sonic. It's my husband calls sonic imagination, imagination of sound. This is where the piano is not just a percussive instrument. You can transform the piano into an orchestra. You can make it a singing, lyrical instrument by really developing an incredible legato, having a good sense of phrasing, and different colors of voices. Or, for example, the slow movement of the Beethoven Opus 2, number 2, Sonata, which yom, bum, bim, bum, bum. It's a chord in the right hand and pizzicato in the left. That's a string quartet. And you have to make the piano sound like a string quartet, which also means you have to control the pedal. So for me, it's a combination of many ingredients that go into, like ingredients in baking a cake. If something is missing, the cake is not going to come out just right. So part of it is also not being afraid to please everyone. You know, sometimes you have to find your own way. And that way may not necessarily be the way that most other people imagine it. But if you believe in it, this is what my teacher always said. It's always about conviction. And, you know, my teacher was Gary Grafman, and the fact is he's had many amazing students, and we all play differently. So that gives the credit to him for being a teacher who encouraged each of his students to find their own way. And Schumann, I always talk about this, Schumann wrote a piece called On Music and Musicians, a book. And there are over 100 maxims. For me, this is like my Bible. And I have gone back to this countless times since I was a teenager when I discovered it. And one of the things that Schumann writes is, when you are performing, do not concern yourself with who may be listening, but always play as though a master were present. In other words, don't care. Is there, you know, are there 5 critics listening to you, or other people, you know, whom you don't necessarily like, or you may not get along with? That's irrelevant, because the world is you, the piano, and the music. And so the more you can immerse yourself in the music, and, for example, with Schumann, I mean, how can you play Kreisleriana if you haven't read E.T.A. Hoffmann, Kater Moore, the story about the cat? I mean, it's all important, because Schumann was a Renaissance man. When he couldn't really play the piano anymore after he injured his 4th finger, he turned to books and writing. And I mean, all of his early pieces were piano pieces, but a lot of them, I mean, Papillon is based on the book. And so if you don't know the stories that Schumann already himself has presented, then how can you totally understand the music? So the more research you do, and the more you read about the composers, I just think this is very important. And that's where the element of history and even musicology enter the picture as well. I mean, you're playing Schumann, get a translation of the letters he wrote to Clara. Or look at the letters that have been translated between Schumann and Brahms. You look at the love letters that Schumann especially wrote to Clara. His were much more passionate than hers. Well, you understand then how he poured his whole soul into the music that he was writing at that time. When he wrote the Humoresque, he wrote to her, I've been staying up all night for a week. I'm writing my Humoresque and thinking only of you. I mean, the letters are just amazing. And this brings me to the main point of all of this. All of these composers were human beings, just like you and I. And every human being, first of all, has experience that they gain from life. So if you've had a breakup, or you've had a tragedy in your family, let's say you've lost someone very dear to you, that's going to change the way you approach a piece. Because that experience of life goes into you, and that goes into your playing. And the more experience you gain, the more enriched you will be. And that's how it was for the composers. I mean, look at Schubert, look at Beethoven, and the differences. Every composer has a story. They had their life, they had great love or not. Schubert seems to be like the wanderer who was always searching. But you have to know this. And even a little bit of that knowledge brings something very valuable to your own interpretation. And I think if you combine the imagination of sound along with your own imagination, that's how you create your own musical personality. It's not about copying. Again, Schumann said it best. He said, the problem with those who imitate is that they imitate only that which is beautiful. That which is obvious, not that which is truly beautiful. That which is obvious. And the imitator will never be as good as the original, which is true. We know that. Pianists who tried to imitate Horowitz, well, the imitation was just not as good as the original. And that's why. The more independent you are, but with a lot of information. Gather information, gather experience. That's what puts you on the path to becoming a complete musician, or at least that's what I feel.
Alvin, would you like to add anything? I think we're okay.
After all of this, I don't know if there's anything to add. One of the things I was just reminded of is I was an undergraduate, and many of my lessons were, they were some of the best lessons of my life. Many of the lessons were just questions, asking, what do you feel? What do you act? How are you going to get it? How's the sound going to change? What method can you do? What texture can you do? And I would always have an answer. And it's Lydia true. And one of the times she said to me, she said, you know what? Every time I ask you a question, you have what I consider to be a very good answer. And the fact that you come to a lesson with none of these means that you have not asked those questions of yourself. You have the answers. You have the means. You just haven't asked. And so many times now, when I ask a student, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? He said, I wasn't thinking anything. I said, yeah, I didn't get anything either. And it's the same thing. It's that process. I think we just have to keep asking ourselves. You know, I sit at home and I'm listening to her practice. I will actually go into our music room and say, why are you doing that? Because it's not something I would have thought of, either a way of practicing or some kind of phrasing or something like that. Those are questions that I would ask if I heard somebody play something, or if I'm in my own room and I'm the only one there. It's always a matter of why, how, what am I wanting, and then how can I achieve it? So to me, that's one way of inspiring myself, because we do have great mentors, but we can only see them 1 hour a week in most cases, and so this is just another way of finding inspiration for ourselves, not always being so dependent on somebody, although that's really important, but also developing the means to be on your own at some point in your life, which we all are.
So that was kind of a tough question. You want to ask us some questions? Now it's your turn. By now you've probably thought, yes.
As Professor Pompa-Baldi reminds that golden pianist, I think nowadays many pianists, for instance, if this pianist is a good pianist, some media might say that, oh, this violinist, this cellist reminds me of someone in golden era. But what is the judgment of a good pianist nowadays? Is it playing like golden era musicians or better than golden era musicians? What's your...
Yeah, I don't think it's about comparing yourselves to anybody. I think it's the spirit in which they operated and with which they did things. And for me personally, it's the freedom that they had without being anarchists. They had an incredible freedom that has been lost. I find that in modern day playing, everybody equates tempo and timing. Timing is not tempo. You don't have to swallow a metronome and spit out notes. And it seems that people play, I'm not referring to any of you, I'm just saying in general, very broadly, and very generalizing. But I find that that's one of the things that really bothers me the most, because it doesn't, you know, because music is a language and we don't talk that way.
You like that.
Yeah, you know, it's not about. It's more like artificial intelligence would probably. Now it's even that is getting closer to us. But so that's one thing. And then in terms of sound, the ability to me when we talk about okay, we need to tell the story. We need to everything that has been said here is absolutely perfect and true. But how do we vehicle that? How do we express that at the piano? Getting around, like has been said, I think it was you said that the ability to sustain a singing line. How do we do that at the piano? Which getting around the percussive nature of the instrument, it's just searching and layering. Layering is something that I don't hear very often people do well. You know, especially because there is a certain mechanical side of things that is actually destroying the sustaining of a long note, for example. That's to me, that to me would bring us closer to the golden age if we went back to trying and searching for a way to make the sound of a piano that is a finite sound. It decays as soon as you touch a note, but it can be sustained for a lot longer. It just, if you layer and nuance carefully, these little things are what are important. And then when you have all those tools, then you can go to, okay, knowledge, experience, and expressing. That's all. To me, even competitions are, you know, I don't know, they've become mechanical factories, you know, and some famous teachers are piano factories, you know, pianist factories. They even go down to knowing what repertoire to choose in order to win a competition. To me, when you teach, you shouldn't think about, oh, I have to prepare my student to win a competition. I have to prepare you to be the best musician you can be, and if I can be of help, then you'll take your own road, and of course we all want the students to be successful. But this to me is like a mechanism that feeds itself. You know, let's produce pianists, and they all play the same. You know, that's the way I feel.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And some, right?
Another question. Don't be bashful. No questions? What are we doing here without questions? You must have a question. or
We
something.
already know everything.
May I add one thing?
Yeah, so I want them to ask.
Oh, sure,
Think of a
I'm
question.
just reacting to
Yeah.
Antonio's very, very wonderful answer to your question. It's also about not making perfection technique the goal. Because if that's your goal, just playing all the notes, that, for me, playing all the notes is the foundation. And you have to do something to build a house on top of the foundation. That's where this whole idea of imagination, both whether it's a story or a sonic imagination, which I think is very important. If you can develop a sound that is your own sound, that's something that makes you an artist and immediately separates you from others who are, if their goal is just the perfection. I've played all the notes, a friend of mine once said. And my answer, I wanted to say, well, great, but then what? So that's why, I mean, the key word here was language. Music is a language. It is a communicative language. And somehow, if you feel it, the important thing is for you to find a way to transmit that to your listener. That's what it's all about. And I know, I grew up in Philadelphia. I used to go from the age of 7 on. I used to go to hear the Philadelphia Orchestra every weekend. And I heard everybody. And by the age of 10, I knew so many concertos and so many symphonies, and they weren't just piano concertos. One of my favorite concertos was the Brahms Double, because the orchestra did it every year. And it's also just hearing the sound of the orchestra. I know that that has shaped my own playing, because I approach everything that I do as an orchestra, not just as a piano. So the more you listen, and yeah, I'm playing chamber music too, it's essential The most important is the ear, both for hearing and then responding. And as far as sound, I remember that Schnabel once said that before you can play a sound, you have to imagine it in your head, and then you find it in the keys.
So,
So is there another question? Because otherwise we're just going to have to sit here in silence. Until you have, it's inconceivable to me that here we are, all of us, and that that you don't have questions about anything. I mean, you don't have to ask us a question related to the subject. Yes, let's hear your question.
What other instruments other than piano do you guys play? Yes. How does it help to you, like play piano? Yes.
Well, I don't play another instrument, but I was a professional ballet dancer. And that started, actually, I started piano. I didn't start piano lessons. I started because my cousin and my brother played the piano, and I just played by ear. And I started dancing around the house, and my father said to my mother, if you don't give her dance lessons, every lamp in the house is going to be broken. So I got piano lessons. There's a huge relationship between dancing and playing the piano, because how you use your body, and also to play without, injuring yourself.
I've never learned another instrument, but from the age of about 11 until about 18, I played with every instrument basically that exists. And I played a ton of repertoire, even way, way, way more than my solo repertoire. So I think that I was trying to capture information even when I didn't know.
Anybody else?
I played violin for 6 years.
Ooh.
Out of high school. Yeah, I was really terrible.
Anybody on this side?
both my parents were string players, so I grew up hearing violin and viola all the time, but my father said if I played the violin, he would kill me.
Your question? You try to feel less before you, and then it's coming up. Feel less. Does not question.
So I wanted to go back to there was a lot of discussion about finding your own unique voice and also about bringing the score to life and respecting what's on the score, but also maybe using your own imagination to drive something else out of it. So I was also just wondering what your own philosophy is in terms of, I think, how to respect the score, but at the same time, the amount of flexibility you can have that may deviate with the composer's intentions. Where do you draw that line?
You know, it's a subjective thing, all of this is, because I could say to you that, okay, play. First of all, I believe in getting as close to the composer and choosing of dishes as possible. A good example for me would be to tell you, if you're going to play Chopin, don't use the new Polish thing.
Thank you, God.
I can tell you that, you know, I grew up with powers, but as I got older, I became Cooley because they're different Cooley editions, because I guess there are more autographs, but some of them are Cooley editions. You can actually write the Chopin's fingerings and italics and pedaling, you know, so that's the closest we can get to Chopin walking in here, sitting down and playing piano, which probably won't happen during this festival, but I wish it would. The other thing is, you see different versions of Chopin, and that gives you the idea that it wasn't so strict that you couldn't experiment. So I really am a believer in, yes, play, you know, so we don't have that window exactly with Beethoven, but we do have late forte pianos, and if you go and play them, you will see, you can use Beethoven's pedals, and you see how long an instrument sustains, and it teaches you what Beethoven heard. So that helps you make this, you know, this, as I say, subjective, but so you try to do what Beethoven wrote, and you know, it's inconceivable to be able to do that without having some idea of what he heard when he was hearing it in his head. So you depart from that, but then after that, you know, I think it's important to use ornamentation in Mozart, to have a little leeway for improvisation, to change things, because these people were human. They did not play That we know many of them are great virtuosos and what they did not play every day, sit down at the piano and play the same way. They improvised, they went to their special spot or their trance or whatever, they took a drink to help her compose or whatever they did, you know. So that's what I mean by going on a trip. So you can't look at it in such a rigid way. You won't get there as far. Yeah, please open yourself.
I think it's maybe important to try to understand what you are about to play or what you are playing, and ask yourself, am I contradicting directly what the composer wanted, the spirit, rather than the letter of what they wanted? And that's a difficult question, perhaps. You say where you draw the line. I often say this to students, like if you, it may sound very banal, but if you see a forte and you deliberately choose to play a piano, okay, you're contradicting what the composer wrote. You may still be able to have some leeway with that, but do you have a good reason to do that, and what is it? That's, you know.
I think a lot of times you see them working and you don't even, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I would look at these long pedal marks, first they intend to see it, I would look at everything. Well, I remember when I was a really tiny kid, that thing, the pedal mark that looked, I thought it was like a little dot. And I thought, what is that? You know, and then that little star, you know, how could it be so cut and dry? Dog off, you know, I mean, it's, but sometimes, you know, you see these long pedals and you really have to figure out how to layer and how far the pedal goes down to make it work. And you have to experiment with it, explore it.
The truth is that there is a lot of, like, so much that is left to the interpreters. To even if you try to be to adhere to the text, there is so much that can't be written down, couldn't be written down. So that's why it's so that people play so differently. I mean, you can have interpreters who all swear by the fact that they are trying to do what's written on the score, and yet they all play differently. That's the reason why, because everything is there is no absolutes. I mean, again, forte, how forte, piano, how piano. I mean. Pedal, how much pedal, and do you finger pedal, or do you take the duration of the notes literally? Do you have silence when there is rests, or do you pedal through them? And there is a lot of things that you can do that is, it all goes to what you want to achieve, and there is a lot of parameters that you can change that make the music entirely your own.
Do you play by ear now?
With classical, no.
Right, just we play by ear.
Sure. It's just,
Yeah, so I mean, in other words, what we could do is it would be interesting to have a class where somebody plays something and then the other person has to play it without music, just by ear. Because when we talk, we don't learn language first by reading, you know, the cow jumped over the moon. We pick it up,
Yes.
and I think part of it is we've kind of lost that in music where you just play something and you play it back. And that part isn't so developed, so you get like using your eyes. You don't use your eyes to hear music, you know, so it shouldn't be going, looking at the score this way and then here. It's the other way around, it goes to your ears. And, you know, if you're sighted, it's great, you can read music, but there have been, as you know, really great blind pianists who play very well, so it's in here. Another question, yes.
Can I just,
Yes,
I think your question is very important. What do we do to not sound like a facial, if I understood it correctly?
But at the same time respecting the text. That's
Right. If you look at a landscape, let's say landscape, some people will notice a tree. Some people, to them the tree will be really worth highlight. Other people will notice a cloud, sort of off the center. Other people will notice far away in the distance mount. And it would be the same landscape. So you still are true to trying to describe what you see. It's very common that, and I've heard it many times, that someone decides, I'm going to do this because no one else is doing that. And then a friend who says, oh, if you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. And soon after, the music becomes unrecognizable. And unfortunately, there are some well-known pianists who have in the past and who are still trying to do that to the music. And I always say, be true to the ears. Some people may see a smile, and other people may notice that it's a smile through tears. Still a smile, but it depends on the, from which angle you're watching. So be true to the music. And if, like, you have your own voice that's unlike anybody else's voice here, find that voice, and that will be achievement. Yeah. So,
I say something about the boss, something about my, I don't think about freedom, but everything is very relative. Yeah, well, it's easy to say be free or freedom, listen to the old masters, how free they are. They are masters. Yeah, they know how to make it. But with making also, with finding a personal voice, yeah, you have to be in a style, right? This style, I think it's also, again, talent as well, but taste, style. It's a very, you're on the edge all the time, yeah? A little bit more is not good, a little less is not good. Of course, you have your teacher who can tell you. My teacher was always saying, I prefer you give more than nothing, or not, I can tell you when it's too much, But again, stylistically, to play most of that also, you need background, you need to educate yourself. That's very important. That's what we talk about, like 1 hour, right? So freedom, again, just a small thing also, coming to the previous question, coming back about interpreters, and you said about golden age. What is better now than golden age, or something you asked like that?
What?
You asked something like golden age pianist, right? You said something.
Golden age.
Are we better now?
Oh,
Yeah, what we call golden age piano.
My question is,
How can you compare? Yeah, well, say again.
my question is, nowadays, if we judge a pianist, if he's a good pianist, some media might say that this pianist might reminds me of some
Yeah.
of golden era.
Well, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
a compliment, but
Another, what's your opinion on the pianist nowadays? If he's a good pianist, should he play like golden era or play better?
what is like? Can you really do that?
I don't
Achieve
know.
that level?
I don't know.
It's so better than that. But lucky you if you can do that.
I think it's a hypothesis.
Yeah.
I think he or she should push themselves to try to get to that level.
Yeah.
Aspirationally.
What makes you remember a concert? If you hear a concert, what makes you remember a concert?
What makes you remember a concert?
You like your concert. What makes
I mean,
it
some
special?
concerts you remember, and some concerts you not so memorable. What is it that makes you remember the concert?
Something makes maybe this pianist he didn't play well in the whole concert, but in some points the notes, the thing they made, something like the progression of the chords, something really makes the music standing out by others. That makes the music uncomparable. Mostly played very bad during the whole recital, but only
But
There were moments that
one makes it really stand out.
yeah, so you can see there's something special.
Something like Plebna, I listened to this recital 5 years ago.
Right? Everything.
But for example, when you look at the golden era, there were many great artists, but there were also, for example, someone like Paderewski, who often played with hands not together and did a lot of things exaggerated. Alfred Cortot, who was one of the most inspirational pianists, especially for his singing sound and for the pianissimos he achieved. In some of his recordings, he missed so many notes, he would not have passed through a competition today. So again, it's about